Hey everyone, and welcome back to Reader's Podcast for another deep dive.
Yes, welcome back.
This time we're going to be looking at Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now.
That's right. One of those
Oh,
modern spiritual classics.
read it yet? This is definitely one to pick up.
It's a good one.
So what do you think is the best way to describe The Power of Now?
Well, I always saw it as a really practical guide to escaping suffering, you know?
Yeah, and one of the things I think is really cool about it is that
Hmm.
it's not tied to any particular religion or
Right.
belief system.
Yeah, it's very accessible, I think.
Yeah.
And even uses like a question and answer format sometimes, which
Yeah.
makes it really easy to digest.
So for anyone who hasn't picked up this book yet,
Okay.
where do we even begin with The Power of Now?
Well, I think you really have to start with one of the central concepts of the book, which is this idea that you are not your mind.
Okay, so that's a pretty big statement, right?
It is. It's a big statement, but it's also incredibly liberating when you really start to grasp it.
So what exactly does he mean by you are not your mind?
Well, he's pointing to this distinction between the thinking mind and the deeper self, the self that's beyond thought.
Right.
And he even uses this analogy
Yeah.
of a beggar sitting on a box of gold to illustrate this point.
Yeah, I like that one.
You know, so many of us are like that beggar. We're completely unaware of the treasure that we're sitting on.
So we're all carrying around this treasure chest of inner peace and
Yeah,
happiness, but our minds are
We are, but we don't know it.
distracting us.
Yeah, our minds are so busy
Right.
focusing on problems and worries that they completely miss this incredible source of joy and peace that's always available to us.
Yeah. I mean, I know for me personally, I spend so much time in my head,
Right.
either reliving the past or worrying about the future.
That's the thing, isn't it? Our minds are always somewhere else.
Yeah.
They're either in the past or the future, but rarely in the present moment.
And that's really what he's getting at with the title, The Power of Now. Right?
Exactly. The power of now.
Like that's what the true.
Yeah, it's all about recognizing that the only moment we ever truly have is this one,
Magic is.
the present moment.
Yeah.
And, you know, so much of our suffering comes from resisting that truth, from trying to live anywhere but here and now.
Okay, so this idea of the mind constantly pulling us out of the present moment.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, Tolle calls it psychological time, this mental construct that keeps us trapped in the past and future.
Right.
You know, it's like watching a movie and constantly rewinding or fast forwarding, never actually experiencing the film as it unfolds.
And that's kind of how we live our lives, right?
Exactly. We're either dwelling on past regrets or fantasizing about future possibilities. And in the process, we miss the beauty and the richness of what's happening right in front of us.
I think he even uses that example of like looking at a tree.
Right?
You know,
Yes.
we can look at it and think, oh, that's a tree.
Right.
But if we really become present with it,
Mm-hmm.
it's like we're seeing it for the first time.
Exactly like we're seeing it with fresh eyes. Yeah.
All the details, all the textures, the colors, it's all so vibrant and alive when we're truly present.
So how do we do that?
Well, there are a lot of different practices.
What do we actually suggest?
Cultivate that sense of presence.
Yeah, like becoming more aware of our breath, you know, tuning into our senses, paying attention to the simple things around us.
So it's not necessarily about meditating for hours
No, not at all.
on end.
It's more about bringing a sense of awareness to our everyday lives.
Yeah, like integrating mindfulness into everything we do.
Right, even the most mundane tasks.
So like washing the dishes or brushing your teeth.
Exactly, it's about bringing our full attention to whatever we're doing.
Okay, so we've talked about the mind and the importance of being present.
Yes.
What about the ego? Where does that fit in?
Ah, the ego now, that's a big one.
Yeah, because he talks a lot about the ego in this book.
He does. The ego is a central theme in The Power of Now.
So what is the ego, according to Eckhart Tolle?
Well, he describes it as this false sense of self that's created by our identification with our thoughts and emotions.
Okay, so it's not who we really are. It's just this
It's not who we truly are. It's more like a mask that we wear.
construct.
Right. And it's constantly seeking validation and approval from the outside world.
So it's kind of like that voice in our head that's always
Yeah.
comparing us to others and
It's the voice of judgment and fear.
make us feel
It's the voice that tells us we're not good enough,
good enough.
not smart enough, not
Yeah.
thin enough. You name it.
Yeah,
The ego is always finding ways to make us feel inadequate.
and it's really good at that.
It is. It's a master of deception.
So if the ego isn't who we really are,
Mm-hmm.
then who are we?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Right.
Well, Tolle says that our true nature is what he calls being.
Yeah.
It's the unchanging, timeless presence that underlies all of our thoughts and emotions.
So it's like the sky, right?
Exactly.
It's always there, even if the clouds are
It's always there, vast and open.
covering it.
Even when the storms are raging,
Yeah.
our true nature remains untouched.
And that's what we need to tap into.
That's what we need to connect with.
Yeah.
And the way we do that is by becoming aware of our thoughts without judgment.
Okay, so it's not about eliminating our thoughts because that's pretty much impossible.
Our thoughts are always going to be there.
Yeah.
It's more about creating some space between ourselves and our thoughts.
So it's about recognizing that we're not our thoughts.
Exactly. We are the awareness that's observing the thoughts.
Okay, and how do we do that?
Well, that's where practices like mindfulness meditation come in.
Right.
They help us to develop that muscle of awareness to become more present with our thoughts and feelings.
So it's like we're training our minds to be more still
Yes, to be more present.
and more focused.
And as we do that, we naturally start to experience more peace, more joy, more connection.
So it's like we're tapping into this hidden source of power within us.
Exactly, the power of now.
And that's the whole point of the book, right?
That's the heart of it, the power of the present moment.
So how do we access this power?
Well, Tolle suggests that we can tap into this power by surrendering to the present moment,
Okay.
by accepting what is and trusting in the wisdom of the universe.
Surrender, that sounds a little paradoxical.
It does, doesn't it?
To gain power.
But it's about recognizing that true strength comes from letting go from relinquishing control.
So it's not about giving up or becoming passive.
No, not at all. It's about aligning ourselves with the flow of life rather than resisting it.
So it's about trusting that everything is happening exactly as it should.
Exactly. It's about having faith in the process.
Okay, but what about suffering? I mean, suffering is a part of life.
It's an inevitable part of the human experience.
Right. So how do we reconcile that with the idea of being present and surrendering?
Well, Tolle makes a distinction between pain and suffering.
Okay.
He says that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional.
Okay, that's an interesting distinction.
And he goes on to explain that much of our suffering comes from our resistance to what is.
So it's not the actual situation that's causing us to suffer.
Yes.
It's our reaction to it.
Exactly. It's our mental and emotional resistance that amplifies the pain and turns it into suffering.
So like when I get stuck in traffic and I start
Right.
freaking out.
It's not the traffic itself that's causing you to suffer.
Yeah.
It's your reaction to the traffic.
So it's about accepting the present moment.
Yes.
Even when it's not pleasant.
Even when it's challenging or painful.
Okay, so acceptance doesn't mean we have to like everything that happens.
It doesn't mean we condone it or approve of it.
Right.
It simply means that we acknowledge it.
We allow it to be there.
We allow it to be there without judgment.
Okay.
And from that place of acceptance, we can then choose how to respond.
So it's about finding that sweet spot between acceptance and action.
Exactly. It's about surrendering to what is S while also taking inspired action to create a better future.
Okay, so we've talked about the mind, the ego, the power of...
Surrender and acceptance.
Yes.
What about forgiveness? Where does that fit in? Forgiveness is another key theme in the power of now.
Okay, because I think forgiveness is something that a lot of people struggle with.
It is. It's not always easy to forgive, especially when we've been deeply hurt.
Yeah. So what does Tolle have to say about forgiveness?
Well, he believes that holding on to resentment and anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Okay, that's a powerful image.
It's a vivid way of illustrating the futility of holding on to grudges.
Right.
He says that forgiveness is not about condoning the other person's actions.
It's about freeing ourselves.
It's about freeing ourselves from the pain of the past.
Right.
And it's about recognizing that the other person is most likely acting from their own pain and their own unconsciousness.
So it's about having compassion for them.
Exactly. It's about understanding that everyone is doing the best they can with the level of awareness they have.
So forgiveness is really an act of self-love.
It's about releasing ourselves from the burden of carrying around all that anger and resentment.
And it's about creating space for healing.
Exactly, both for ourselves and for our relationships.
So we've covered a lot of ground here already,
We have.
but I feel like we're just scratching the surface of the power of now.
We are. There's so much more to explore.
So much more to uncover.
So many more layers to this book.
Yeah, and I'm excited to dive even deeper
Me too.
into these ideas.
It's going to be a fascinating journey.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it really is. And, one of the things that Tolle really emphasizes in the book is the importance of relationships as a mirror for our own spiritual growth.
Yeah, he talks a lot about how our relationships can
They really can.
either be a source of immense joy or a major obstacle to our awakening.
It's true. You
Yeah.
know, our relationships can bring up so much stuff for
Oh
us.
yeah, they're like this incredible
We're like a magnifying glass
training
for
grounds.
all of our unconscious patterns and beliefs.
Yeah. And he talks about how if we're not at ease with ourselves when we're alone,
Right.
we'll inevitably seek out relationships to cover up that unease.
It's like we're trying to fill a void
Right.
with another person.
And that never really works.
It never does in the long run.
So what does a healthy, conscious relationship look like according to Tolle?
Well, he talks about the importance of acceptance.
Okay.
Accepting our partners as they are without trying to change them.
Which is so hard sometimes,
It is. It's a real practice.
especially when you can see their potential.
Right. But it's about recognizing that everyone is on their own journey,
Yeah.
and we can't force anyone to grow or evolve faster than they're ready to.
But that doesn't mean we have to put up with abuse or disrespect, right?
Of course not. Healthy boundaries are essential.
Okay, so it's about finding that balance
It is.
between acceptance and also
Also, between honoring our own needs
protecting ourselves.
and respecting the needs of our partner.
Yeah, and he talks about how our partners can act like a mirror,
They do.
reflecting back to us our own unconscious patterns and beliefs.
It's amazing how that works, isn't it?
It is. It's like they're showing us
Yeah.
the things we need to work on.
Sometimes it's not what we want to see,
No.
but it's always what we need to see.
Yeah. So what do we do when we see those things?
Well, the first step is to become aware of them,
Okay.
to simply notice them without judgment. And then we can start to explore those patterns and beliefs
Okay.
and see how they might be holding us back from experiencing true love and intimacy.
So it's like our relationships can become this incredible catalyst for personal growth
They can if we're open to it.
if we're willing to do the work.
Exactly, the work of self-discovery.
And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about relationships is that they can really help us to become the best versions of ourselves.
They can if we approach them with awareness and intention.
And speaking of awareness, Tolle also talks about the importance of becoming aware of the pain body.
Oh, yes, the pain body. That's a fascinating concept.
Yeah. Could you explain that a little bit?
Well, he describes the pain body as this accumulation of emotional pain that we carry around with us.
Okay.
It's like this invisible entity that can take over us and cause us to act in ways that are not in our best interest.
So it's like this kind of shadow self.
It is. It's a shadow self that's fueled by our past traumas and our unresolved emotional wounds.
And it can really wreak havoc in our life.
It can sabotage our relationships, our careers, our health.
And he talks about how the pain body can be triggered by certain events or even certain thoughts.
Exactly. It's like it's lying dormant, waiting for an opportunity to strike.
So how do we deal with the pain body?
Well, the first step is to become aware of it,
Okay.
to recognize when it's present and to observe it without judgment.
So it's not about trying to suppress it or ignore it.
No, it's about bringing it into the light of consciousness.
And he talks about how this is especially important for women
Yes, he does.
because women tend to have a stronger connection to their emotional bodies.
And he encourages women to use the time around their menstrual cycle as a powerful opportunity for spiritual practice and transmutation of pain.
Okay, so it's like instead of seeing our period as a curse,
Right.
we can see it as a sacred time.
A time for deep inner work,
For transformation.
for connecting with our feminine power.
And for healing.
Exactly.
That's a really beautiful perspective.
It is. It's about reclaiming our power and honoring the cycles of nature that flow through us.
And what about men? What's their role in supporting women on their spiritual journeys?
Well, Tolle encourages men to become more present and aware of their own emotions,
Okay.
to learn to listen deeply to women, and to create a safe and supportive space for women to express themselves fully.
So it's about men stepping up and becoming more conscious partners.
Exactly. It's about creating a partnership where both partners are committed to their own spiritual growth and to supporting each other on their journeys.
I love that. It's about men and women working together
Yeah.
to heal the wounds of the past and create a future that's filled with love, peace, and mutual understanding.
That's the beautiful vision that Tolle puts forth in The Power of Now.
It is. It's a vision of a world where we're all awake and aware, living in the present moment.
And connected to our true nature.
Exactly.
It's a vision that's available to us right here, right now.
If we're willing to do the work,
The work of waking up.
the work of letting go.
The work of becoming who we truly are.
And that's really what it all comes down to, isn't it?
It is.
Remembering who we truly are.
Beyond the limitations of our minds and egos.
Beyond the pain body.
Beyond the stories we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
We are so much more than that.
And the power of now is a guide to help us remember
It is.
and to help us live from that place of remembrance.
A place of peace, joy, and love.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a beautiful reminder that we have so much more power than we realize.
We do. We have the power to choose our thoughts, our reactions, our reality.
And I think that's really the key takeaway from the power of now, isn't it?
It's about recognizing that the present moment is all we ever have.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
within this present moment lies the potential for everything.
For peace,
For joy,
for love,
love,
for,
for transformation.
for creation.
Yeah, it's all there waiting for us.
It is if we can just get out of our own way.
And I think that's where the real challenge lies.
It is. The mind is a tricky thing,
It loves to keep us stuck in the past or worried about the future.
but we can train it
We can train it to be more present.
to be more mindful.
Yeah, and that's really the whole point of this book, isn't it?
It is. It's about waking up to the power of now,
To the reality of who we truly are,
to the beauty and the wonder of this present moment
and to the infinite possibilities that lie within us.
and all around us.
So for anyone out there who's feeling lost or stuck or disconnected, or just looking for a little more peace in their lives,
I highly recommend checking out The Power of Now.
it's a book that can change your life.
It has changed my life.
It's a guidebook to awakening to freedom,
To true happiness.
to the realization that everything we've ever wanted is already here right now.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive into the power of now.
It has been.
I always learn so much from these conversations.
Me too. They're always so enriching.
Thank you for joining us today and for sharing your insights.
It's been my pleasure.
And for all of our listeners out there, thank you for tuning in.
We appreciate you being here.
Be sure to subscribe to Reader's Podcast for more deep dives into the books that are shaping our world.
And until next time, keep reading, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.
Thanks for listening.